Meet the candidates for Lieutenant Governor in their only joint appearance next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewald, and I'm joined by Maura Donnelly, Susquehanna associate, as usual, for a very special edition of Behind the Headlines. On this edition of Behind the Headlines, we have the only debate, a qualified debate, but debate between the lieutenant gubernatorial candidates in this year's spirited race for the governorship of Pennsylvania. We are going to start out in the first half and have one candidate, and the second half of our show we'll have the second candidate, our Democratic candidate. For the first half, we have a Republican candidate, Jim Cawley. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Charlie, good to see you again.
It's nice to have you here. We are, by the way, so our viewers know, there was no there was not a coin toss for who was on first and who was on second. It was simply a matter of scheduling and whose schedule permitted that. So Maura and I would like to start you out with the question of, what are your qualifications to be lieutenant governor? In the last 10 years, two of our lieutenant governors have had to assume two of our president pro tems have had to achieve to work in the lieutenant governorship, and one of ours, two times we had to have them succeed to the governorship.
Right.
In
the last 20 years, two lieutenant governors have served in the role as governor.
Right.
Governor
Single.
Single in an acting role during the Casey administration, and of course Governor Schweiker when Governor Ridge was elevated to Homeland Security Director. It's a very serious role for someone to ask for the public trust in order to become lieutenant governor, and I do think that I bring a unique skill set to the office. For the last 5.5, almost 6 years now, I've served as a county commissioner in Bucks County, and in that role, if you consider the things that both constitutionally and statutorily a lieutenant governor is responsible for, being president of the Senate, the chairman of the Board of Pardons, chairman of the Local Government Commission, and chairman of the Emergency Management Council. Obviously, coming from a local government perspective, I think pretty ably serve in the role of the chairman of the Local Government Commission. Likewise, during my term as a county commissioner, unfortunately, the Delaware River has come over its banks a couple of times, and I've had to declare disaster emergencies, and I know what it's like to have to pick up the phone and call the people here in Harrisburg at Pima and hope that those people answering the phone know what it is that needs to be done in order to preserve life and in order to preserve property. So I bring a unique perspective to that as well. Previous to my time of service as a county commissioner, I spent 10 years on the staff of a State Senator Tommy Tomlinson in Pennsylvania's 6th District. So I've seen the office of Lieutenant Governor from its governing perspective. And I know how important it will be to have an able Lieutenant Governor in the chair to be able to guide what I hope is a Corbett agenda through the Senate. I think that likewise as well, I've spent a fair amount of time in the private sector in the practice of law. I thought it was very important to have one foot planted in the public sector, but one foot planted in the private sector as well. So I think I bring a dearth of knowledge and a perspective that perhaps is a little unique than any other candidate that has run for lieutenant governor either in the primaries or now in the general election.
Typically, taking over as lieutenant governor or becoming governor would be an enviable position, and everyone would look to you and say, well, you're so fortunate. You're heading into critical times.
Not so many people are saying that now.
Yeah, nobody is saying that. In fact, they're saying you must be nuts. In fact, you know, you've got job crisis, we've got financial crisis. How are you prepared to handle that going into really, really tough times?
Well, the way I'm prepared to handle it is I took a hard look very early on at my party's candidates for governor, and I looked around to see if there was somebody who shared my vision of Pennsylvania, because I'm a lifelong Pennsylvanian, and I'm very proud of that. And lately I haven't been too proud of what I've been seeing coming out of Harrisburg, particularly what's been coming out of the governor's mansion. This pursuit for bigger government, this pursuit for more spending, this pursuit to dig a little deeper into people's pockets in the form of more and more broad taxes. I don't understand it. It is not the key, to my mind, to economic prosperity, and the reason why is because it's never worked in the course of human history. What has worked is a reliance on the private sector, individuals, entrepreneurs, creative people who are willing to take risks and put Pennsylvanians back to work. So what I did was I looked at my party's candidates for governor and said, is there anybody who shares that vision? And pretty quickly, I identified that person in our great Attorney General, who's going to make, I think, an even better governor, Tom Corbett. But not only does he share the vision, he has shown time and time again in his public service that he's prepared to make the tough call, that he is prepared to stand up to whatever interest groups, even those within his own party, to do what he considers to be correct. And that's why I knew right away that I wanted to be part of that effort. Very early on in the primary, I endorsed Tom Corbett for governor and have been proud to work side by side with him in this campaign as we share that message of reliance on the individual and reliance on the private sector. And I look forward to governing with him from that perspective as well.
One of the challenges for any new administration would be, of course, the state budget. We've just approved the state budget in July, which I wrote about in a piece for the Harrisburg Patriot right after that, called Government by Postponement. It seems that all we've done is kick the can down the lane for a little bit longer. We made some very optimistic assumptions in that budget. For example, 3% growth.
Irresponsible things as well. Let's not overlook that, particularly in the last 2 years.
Well, the question is, what would you and the general do to address the budgetary situation that we're confronting in Pennsylvania? Because we have just postponed dealing with these issues.
Charlie, what you really have to take a look at that's kind of astonishing is that during the term of this administration, 7.5, almost 8 years now, the state budget has grown by 40%. That's a staggering number. On the day that Ed Rendell took office, the state budget was $22 billion. It took the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 225 years plus, a little bit more and some change, in order to get to a $22 billion budget. Today's budget is in excess of $28 billion and is well on its way to $29 billion. That is an incredible growth in government. But yet, if you talk to individual departments within state government, they talk about all the cuts that they've received. For instance, as a county commissioner, I bring one unique perspective. Public libraries have received an almost 30% cut in funding from Harrisburg in the last 2 budgets alone. So that, coupled with the fact that, as you said, there were some optimistic projections, in particular some of the ones that jumped to mind in last year's budget, not this current fiscal year, but last year, they had built in monies, revenues to balance the bottom line from the tolling of I-80 that they had every reason to believe was not going to pass federal muster, and it didn't. And in this one, once again, looking to the federal government to send us monies for health care, that we didn't get all of what it was that we expected. In fact, we were $250 million short on that. These budgets have been prepared with smoke and mirrors. What we have to do is go into this bureaucracy, go to every department and say, prove to me that you need $1. And when you prove to me that you need $1, prove to me that you need $2 and $3 and $4. And eventually they're going to run out of proof. They're going to run out of excuses, and that's when we're going to be able to reprogram that money into areas where there have been cuts that it makes sense in order to invest in. At some point, perhaps in the distant future, I know it's a novel idea, but if we finally get our fiscal house in order, maybe we can send back some of the money to the people who are sending it to us.
Well, I think that our viewers are probably saying, okay, the budget, we all know it's a bad situation, but what's in it for me? I need a job, I need good health care, I want my kids to have a good education. In jobs, we keep saying jobs, jobs, jobs. It's all about the jobs. What are your plans?
When that actually, as you said, jobs, jobs, and jobs. When I'm asked what the most important issue is in this campaign, I say there are three: jobs, jobs, and jobs. And the reality is, regardless of what section of Pennsylvania I'm in, what region I might happen to be in, every single time, somebody at a campaign stop says to me, if they have a job, they want to know that their job is secure. And if they don't have a job, they want to know that we have a plan in order to help to change that. Tom and I do. It's a multi-pronged approach, and it starts with addressing some of the most oppressive taxes for corporate citizens anywhere in the United States. Right now, our corporate net income tax is 9.99%. Tom and I want to bring that down by about a third. Right now, we're one of only 2 states in the nation that has a cap on the net loss carry forward. We want to get rid of it. Right now, we still have the capital stock and franchise tax. Even though we were told by this governor that it was going to go away, it's still here with us. And probably one of the most offensive taxes that we have on the books right now, and I hear most about, is the inheritance tax, the death tax. Too many of us know stories of the heir to the family farm or the heir to the family business having to sell all or a part of that asset in order to pay a tax. Yeah. That's government denying the American dream, not empowering people to it. So we'll address the tax structure. We also want to address tort reform as well. We want real legal reforms in order to allow businesses to grow in this state. And equally as important as well, we have to change the mindset of the bureaucracy. There are too many, and you pick the initials, DEP, DCNR, L&I, that view themselves as restrictors, as regulators. And they lie and wait to play a gotcha game, that if you don't fill out a form right, if you don't dot every I and cross every T, that they're going to move in and shut your job down or fine you. On a good day, they're going to do both. What we need is people who realize that the job of state government is to be a resource. Bring small business people in and say, if you do this, this, and this, and by the way, we're going to help you through these steps. We'll get you the permit that you need. We'll get you whatever the information is that you need in order to help create jobs. It's going to be a totally different mindset.
Glad you talked about creating jobs. The last 30 seconds, last 45 seconds, and that is go to northern Pennsylvania, go to western Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh, and you'll see Marcellus Shale, but you'll also find a whole separate economy. Outside of Marcellus Shale, there is no economy. Southeastern Pennsylvania, relatively robust in comparison to the rest of the state. There are 2 Pennsylvanias, and this has been true for almost a generation now. What can you and Attorney General Corbett do to create jobs in the northern tier, in Sullivan County, McCain County, Elk County? What can you do to create economic development there?
Well, with all due respect, Charlie, there is but one Pennsylvania. I realize that this administration in particular has spent a lot of time trying to pit regions against one another, but with the approach that I just mentioned, that's going to set the table for economic development and job creation from Erie to Philadelphia and everywhere in between. That region, though, that you mentioned, as I said, has a very, very unique opportunity to really get on the map in a substantial way through the development of a Marcellus Shale and the harvesting of the natural gas that's under that shale shelf. We're looking for some really exciting opportunities, balancing environmental concerns, of course, always. We all want clean air, we all want clean water, we all want to be good stewards of the environment, but we also want to realize that there is a tremendous economic job opportunity and economic development opportunity with the appropriate investment and the appropriate development of Marcellus Shale.
Okay, well, we appreciate your appearance here today. We're going to be asking the same questions to your opponent.
I look forward to his answers.
As we do, and as do our viewers. And we wish you and the General well, as we'll wish your opponents well, and look forward to seeing you in the near future. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Charlie.
We'll be right back with the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.